Diane Cornick from Paint and Porcelain Exchange. I'm here to help beginners get started in China painting and also to encourage those of you that have been painting a while to paint along with us. And today we're going back to basics. I want to review some of the older flowers, the flowers that we all learned when we were beginners because they were flatter flowers, easier to paint. I'm going to be working on coasters this time. And I use these tiles, these 4x4 tiles for my coasters, and they work really, really well. Now, when you buy tiles like this, you want to get the kind, and the reason I did this is you want to get the kind that shine. You don't want to get the matte kind, because the matte kind, if you need to make a correction, the paint doesn't lift as easy. So get one that's shiny. The other thing to look for if you're looking for a tile to paint on is make sure that the sides, the little spacers, now they make these tiles with spacers on the sides so that when you put them together, you know, when you're tiling, it's easier. You don't have to buy those plastic spacers for everything. It's better not to have them because, for instance, I use the IKEA frames. They're about a foot by a foot. And in the middle, they have a small 4x4 section in there, and I just plop these tiles in, and that's how I frame them. But if you have those big spacers on the side, it's not going to be easy to do that. If you buy a tile like this, and you go to a thrift store and you buy the older IKEA frames, like I was talking about, the ones that are like a foot by a foot, and they've got really wide, so when you put the tile in, you've got a really wide frame. They really do a nice job. The second thing is, what do you draw on them with? Now, tiles are not like painting on porcelain, like, you know, a plate or something. They're not like painting on the porcelain that we get from Maryland or Dallas or wherever you get it from. They're not as fine a finish. They're a little harder to paint on. Your paint will drag a little more, and they're a little harder to draw on. So what I recommend is if you're going to draw on anything, the China markers. And these are the kind where you pull down the string to make them bigger, and they're not easy. You try to sharpen these in your pencil sharpener and you end up a gook. So these I've stopped using 1,000 years ago. Also, I find that with those, because they're wax pencils, my paint builds up against them. I get all kinds of paint buildup that I don't like. My preference is one of these two. I have two here. One is red, one is black. They're both Stabilos. They both say that they're for paper, glass, plastic, and metal. These you can sharpen in a pencil sharpener. This is a harder lead than this is. I prefer the black because it's not a hard lead. And with this, I can easily draw my pattern on. And when I paint with a pencil, the paint sort of just absorbs the pencil, and I don't have all these weird marks so that I can't tell if I painted there or not. The other thing a lot of people here use are Sharpies. There's black and red. The red Sharpie, a lot of the people in our clubs here love. These are fine points. I'm not fond of them because the red especially drives me crazy because as I'm painting near it, it mixes in my paint and I can't tell what I've done. Anytime you're drawing on with a marker like this, you can always do it in dashes instead of full lines. And that way, sometimes it's easier to cope with when you're painting and it causes you less interference. So that's another tip for you. Where do I get these? Stabilos? I think you could get them at any place that carries art supplies. I would imagine Hobby Lobby and those have it. Dick Blick carries all this online, so you could certainly order from them. I'm sure DBA, but I don't think the others carry this kind of supply. Okay, so that's that done. I'm working on coasters. We did this one last week. You see my shadow leaves in the background. Those are done with warm brown gray. I'm not going to put a background on this one. Why? Because I have kind of a background with these shadow leaves. If I put a background on, these shadow leaves would change color because when you put China paint over China paint, it's just like stained glass. It's like putting a layer of, let's say you have yellow stained glass and you put blue over it, then it looks like green, it gets more of a green tint to it. So that's the reason I don't want to paint over this. I want the brown there. Now, in this case, this shadow leaf actually can act as a background. Think about it. It looks fine. You may not like the shininess of it, but these are coasters. Now, for coasters, I think simple is better. I'm going to just put I have cork that's adhesive. I'm going to cut it to fit and put on the back of each of these. But I'm going to use this as my color palette for most of my coasters. So they'll all have a similar color palette. There's pink, there's blue, there's green, and there's that's a warm brown gray or a gray or brown or whatever. So those are the colors that I'm going to try to stick with. So you don't always have to do your your background all the way around. Why do I like background? I like background because I think it shows that you painted it. And it doesn't look like the stuff you buy at the store. Let's just go back to my big plate for a minute. I'm still working on this. I'm going to wipe this off and start over again. I am experimenting with different oils and things on this. You see this little white around the edge? Well, I kind of like that as a border. So I knew right away that I wanted to paint the whole plate, tint the whole plate with a color, okay? And I wanted to make it, how does this plate go? It actually goes like this. And that's one of the reasons I have problems with the color. I should have put the darker down here and the lighter up in here. But as you can see, you could change it. You could put it like this too. So any way you want to put it is up to you. But make sure that you decide what the top of your plate is and keep the top of your plate. All right, now with the roses, how did I choose the colors for my background? Okay, we talked last week briefly about color charts, and I found out that the one I use is actually called a Munsell color chart. So this is mine. Find one that works for you. I like this one because Paula White worked with us, and I took a whole class with her on how to use this color chart. So I'm real comfortable with it. And I like it because the colors are vibrant. You don't see browns on here. You don't see black. So that works for me. The other color chart that I just pulled off, this is a simplified color chart. And there are 3 ways that you determine what you're going to use for a background if you want to put a background on something. For my yellow roses, okay, I go to the yellow. And if I want to make it monochromatic, in other words, stick to the yellows, and then I would do the background in yellows, yellow, brown, ochre, maybe even a Meissen brown, but I would stick to the browns and the yellows because those are really all derivatives of the yellow. If I wanted to do what they call an analogous background, and that's not easy to say, then I would use the colors on either side, which in this case, it's kind of a ochre or yellow brown there, kind of a orangey color. And on this side, it's more like a light green. And that's what you would use. If on the other hand, I want to do complementary, which is what I ended up doing, then you go directly across. Now, directly across from yellow is purple. But if you look at my color chart, the Munsell one that I've been using, directly across is this blue violet, but I actually kind of like this color, so they're all sort of in the same family. This is Tahiti, and I use that for my background because it's vibrant and it's pretty. And this is Cerulean, and that's a really beautiful one too. For the darker colors, I can use the blue black, and I can use the blue violet for the background, and it'll make it gorgeous. So that's just an idea. I think when I'm doing a large plate like this, I tend to do the whole background. Yellow usually indicates light for China painters. So if you decide on this that you want to do it monochromatically, the more yellow, you can't do yellow in the background a whole lot because it will indicate light. So you can maybe do it on the light side. I have a little yellow right here. But, you know, that's entirely up to you. But that's kind of how I choose my colors. So get yourself a color chart that you're comfortable with, and use AI on Google or one of those search engines, and ask it some of your questions. Chat GPT is a real good source. If you go to Chat GPT, you can put your questions in and it will answer them. But you have to let it know you're a China painter or you paint porcelain. That's a different kind of paint. So some of the responses it might give you may not be correct, but at least it's a place you can go and ask some questions, and it'll give you some color charts and things like that. So I hope that helps. The size determines to some degree how much background you put on it. But most people nowadays consider no background on pieces more modern. So it's up to you. You don't have to put background on. You can if you want. Now I'm going to do a little on this one. This is a small piece. It's going to be the violet coaster to go with my rose coaster. Simple background. You don't go out very far. If you want to go whole hog on background, then do it. It's up to you. Now for today, for the violets, how do I determine what I'm going to put on this piece, and how do I come up with the design? I have a stash of 1 million different violets. I like greeting cards, so there's one. The reason I like it is they're usually watercolor, and I think watercolor, if you look there, it's a little easier to see the different values of the color. Here's another one. I love this one. This is what I'm going to use today, basically, for my inspiration. Some are pink, and some have blue in them. So that's what we're going to use. And then I also have, like a study. So here's a study that I might want to refer to. One thing that's hard for people is knowing all the different directions things go in. So one of the people in our club did this. Up here is a study, sort of, and then it has the direction of all the leaves. Those are violet leaves. All the different directions they can face, buds, all the different directions the flower can face. This is extremely helpful. So if you can get a hold of this, and it says see cover, so I don't know who got that or where they got it from. I guess if you know, let me know so that I can at least give credit where credit's due. Okay, so now we're going to paint violets. Now I have a student, and one of the things that the student taught me was that it's really hard for her as a beginner to understand shadows. Okay, so if you have a computer and you're computer savvy and you can scan in the picture that you're using, or if you got the picture off of Pinterest or, off of the images on one of the websites, and you save it to your downloads, you can then open it up, like you can insert it into a Word document as a photo. So you get into Word, you do insert photo or insert object. It just depends on how your computer works. And if you use Word, which I do, it comes in and you can put pictures side by side like this. This is really cool, right? And this is a violet here. Now, if I gave this violet to my student, she would look at it and go, I don't know where the shadows are. Even though to me, the shadows are obvious. For her, they're not. So what I suggest you do is make it black and white. And then that way you can see, here's gray, here's black, here's gray, here's almost a white. You can see where the shadows are. You can see where the highlights are. And that may help you as a beginner to get those shadows and highlights right, especially if you're using some kind of a study that you're working from. Okay, that was a big introduction. I'm sorry for that, but I hope it helps you. So for today, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to use a 3/4 inch brush and a 1/4 inch square shader. These are both sharp, and I love them. We're going to use a liner or a scroller. This is a number 4, and that's a Paula Collins. And I'm going to use, of course, my handy dandy brush that has the rounded edges here. So I'll use that for background, for any little bit of background I might do. You might also need an eraser of some sort. Okay, for colors, I'm going to do my violets in both pinks and blues, so you can see them all on one. So I'm going to use Lori Pink, which is my favorite, but it doesn't have to be yours. You can just use a light pink, shell pink, soft pink, any of those will work. Heliotrope, preferably the one that leans towards pink, not the one that leans towards purple. This is a dark purple, dark violet, anything like that would be great. This is Cool Shadow. Why do I like Cool Shadow over Baby Blue? Cool Shadow mixes well with other colors. Baby Blue does too, but Baby Blue is a little stronger. Cool Shadow has that gray to it that makes it like more subdued. That's the reason I use it. Chartreuse. So just some greens. Chartreuse, moss, shading green, that's great. Yellow for the center of the little violet, but you can put that on the next coat. Yellow red, because we usually put a little red dot in there just to give it some interest. And black, that's for the whiskers, but you could also use the dark purple. So this is what I'm starting with. Now, if you're a beginner, I would say do the flowers, get them exactly the way you want them, fire them, then worry about the background. That's my advice, because see all these little tendrils and everything here? If you try to do all that, get it all the way you want it, it's hard to do when there's a background on there. It's easier just to concentrate on the flower first, get a good base coat of the flower on there, and then when you add the background, it won't make you confused. You can also do what I do, which most people say, start with the background, then do the leaves, then do the flower. You always start with what's in the back. But a lot of times I'll do the flower and then I'll think, oh, I could just add a little color here, maybe a little color here. It's up to you. All right, so we're going to start with, now I'm using pretty big brushes, right? So for the leaves, now, you notice here I put in a couple of these veins. They come from the center down. All of them do, including the main one. And on this side, they will too. That's the way violets are. It's a heart-shaped leaf. You can see that here. So you want to make sure that you follow that. Now, it doesn't, this one I made heart-shaped, but I might want it to go up further in there. So I'll just take my pencil and I'll make it go up a little bit further like that. That's fine. You can even make this dark back here so that it's kind of nondescript. So it's entirely up to you. I'm going to start with the leaves because they're behind the flowers. And I'm going to use my big 3/4 inch brush. Use the biggest brush you can. And I'm going to do it with, now, where's my light coming from? That's the other thing I have to decide. For me, I'm right-handed. It probably comes from up here somewhere. So I'll put a little X up there. Remember, all of this will fire off. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of time and look at where the light hits. If I were the light coming across, I'd probably hit here. I'd probably hit here. And then the rest would this section in the center would probably be a little darker. So I'm loading my brush, a full load of chartreuse, a side load of moss. And I'm going to start with this one up here, and I'm just going to put the color behind the violet. Now you see, I'm instantly screwing up that violet. So that's why you do the thing in the back first. Now, this is the main vein. The main vein is what you want to concentrate on. The others are sort of incidental. So the way you do that is you pull towards the main vein as you pull down, and that will kind of highlight that for you. Then you can sort of smooth it out by just going back on your brush so that it smooths it. Then I reverse. I take my chartreuse, my moss green, and I put the darker color on the outside, and I just do little C strokes to help me get the color in. That's good. Now down here, I'm going to use chartreuse and shading green, because this is the side, I'm kind of overemphasizing it, but this is the side that's going to have the, and I'm coming down the middle like this, doing the little C's there. This is the side that's going to have the shade on it. And I'm going to go all the way around that, the bottom of that violet there. And then I'm going to come up here and reverse it. I'm going to take the chartreuse with the shading green and do the shading green on the outside, little C strokes. I'm going to kind of try to leave a center section so that we have a little bit of a highlight there. And I'm going to put a little more dark up in here. That's better. And you see how I do this? C strokes. It'll make your leaf look much softer. There we go. And now we have to put in the little veins. I use my brush. I take the darker color and I'm going to put them in from the top. So there's one over here, there's one over here, and there's one there. And then I'm just going to suggest them like this. Okay, paint towards yourself, and then if you need to, you can soften the edges. Veins are not a constant line. So if you do them, let's say you do them with the eraser, you do them like this, and this, and this. They're all from the same spot, here, and here, and here. You can do that too. Let me get rid of those. I don't particularly care for those. The other thing you could do is you could take and wait till the next coat, and then take your liner or your scroller, and you could just use it. They all have to come from the top though on this, like that. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do. If you think this is too dark here, you can lighten it, but you have to be very careful when you do that, okay? Just kind of hold your brush on the very back and just pull. Okay, so here we're going to go down the middle. And I'm doing it faster now because we've already done it once, so you know what I'm talking about. I've got the dark, the moss green on the inside, because this is the side, see the little X there, that I determined would have a highlight or have the light coming at it. This side I'm going to do little C strokes down at the bottom. I'm going to add my shading green. Now you can do it either way. You can start with your center section or you can start with your outside section. So I'm going around this time. And then I'm going to just pull the dark. Now, which one's on top? You have to determine that, because if you don't determine it now, you're going to have a problem. So I think in this case, this guy's going to go underneath. When I think that, I may want to add a little brown to it if you have brown, or just wait till the next time. Or you could even just wipe this guy out a little, like that, so that he's up on top. So you can do that, that's easy. Okay, those are my leaves. Now I'm going to clean that brush. I'm probably not going to use that brush again. It's pretty big. I'm going to go to my 1/4 inch. And you say, well, that's big too. It's big, but it's not as big as the other. I start with a full load of pink and a side load of heliotrope with a little dash of purple. Okay, that's how I do it. And I'm going to start with whatever one I want to start with. And I'm going to put the depth at the base so that the pink is at the top. You could also use full heliotrope and a little side load of just the purple, the dark purple. But you want to make sure you put it at the base. then kind of reverse and pull it out. Don't make these rabbit ears. When you draw a violet, these aren't a good example. This is the best example here. You see this violet? Okay, when you do violet leaves, do it one side smooth and then the other side broken. One side smooth, that would be this one, and then this one's broken. You don't want them to look like bunny ears. You don't want them equal. You want to give them a little bit of, like here, this is a good example. I made that straight, and then I came down this way. Now this one's not quite that way, but it is kind of, because there and there. So they're not real straight, so think about that when you're doing them. Now I'm going to take, I did the Lori pink with the dark purple, and I'm going to go down here. And I'm just touching it around, okay? And then here, I want the depth in the middle. Here, let me put a little more purple on here. I want the depth in the middle. And then on the outside, I may have to watch. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to come out and pull this out of the background there because it got into the green, and kind of redo it. Wipe the color off and pull it out again. Now you may want to leave a little white on the edge there and a little white on the edge there. That's fine. That's a highlight this time. So that's my pink violet. And I'm going to leave it pink this time, and then it'll give it a pretty undercoat the next time. Now let's do my blue violet. Okay, I'm taking full load of the cool shadow with a side load of the purple now. I'm going to start with the bottom, and I'm just going to come around, and I'm pulling down, but I'm trying not to mess up too much in the middle. Then I'm going to do this guy, and I'm going to do this guy. Don't be afraid if you're not getting the color you want to go back and add more. You shouldn't have to get it on the first try. If you need to get it on the second try, that's fine. Look at how pretty that looks. All right, I'm going to do over here. I want it to be two-toned. I know you go, why on earth? Okay, then I wiped off my brush, and I'm just going to pull the color out to the edge. I want the edge to have a little bit of color because when I fire this, I won't know where the edge is. Put a little cool shadow on my brush. And the reason I do that is because, yeah, you won't know where it is. Now here, I'm taking my finest wipeout tool and just doing that. Then I'll go back in and just smooth that line, because when you use a wipeout tool, you have to get rid of the line. If you keep the line on there, it's no good. There we go. Okay. So here I can add a little, see there? Wherever it's too close to the other colors, or you can't discriminate where the end of it is, you can use a wipeout tool. Then, if you don't want to use your brush because you're afraid you'll mess it up, take your little finger, rub it like this on your paper towel, and just touch it. That will instantly get rid of that line. You use the side of your little finger, and it'll get rid of the line, but it'll still leave a little bit of the detail there for you. Okay. Now I'm going to go back here and do these. I want these to be darker than the ones in front, so I'm going to use a heliotrope with the purple only. Because that combination is a little bit darker. How do I know that? because I just know that. I know that because I looked at my heliotrope and it looks like the dark purple is the heliotrope is darker than my pink. You can also play with it. If you need to know colors and you don't know what your things are going to fire with, get a tile like this. I think I have one here. Yep, I do. And put swatches on it. Now this is so I know my yellows and reds, and which mixes. And fire it and keep it on hand so that you can refer to it if you need to know what colors you want to paint things. Now this is reminiscent of this card that I have. I like the pinks, the purples, the blues. I'm not going to leave them like this long term. They will change on the next fire. But it's a nice basis to start with. Nope, I need this here. There we go. Also, it helps to decide which of these little guys is on top. There we go. Okay, and we've got the purple in the background. I'm going to just go with purple back here because there's a bottom to this little guy, but it's behind here and you can't really see it, okay? You will want to wipe out the center. There we go. There's a little guy back here. I'm just going to put him in. He's just kind of sticking out there. You can even just put him in with a single thing like I did there. There's one over here, there. Okay, now I'm going to take my pink and my purple. Let's do this guy up here. Now he has a little bit of a curve to him, like this, because he's kind of flipping around up there. So you want to make sure that you give him a little curve. There we go. And then down here at the base, I'm going to do it like this. And I'm trying to leave that middle white. So I'm not doing the background on this because you see he's got a stem and stuff. I want to get all that right. Okay, and I'm going to do this guy, I think up here I'm going to do pink and purple. And in this case, you want to bring the purple back up under these because it's facing away. It's facing that direction. It's going that way. So you want to make sure that you put the dark there because the little topper guys are going to be, and he's further off. So I'm just using heliotrope now because this is further off and they'll be secondary. Okay. And then the guy in the middle, I think I'll go with more blue because I haven't done another blue. You got to repeat your colors. There we go. There we go. Say you can't load your brush well. Let me just show you real quickly here. I added the blue back strictly on its own. So you could take your purple, put it in the center like this, where they come together. And then you could take your blue and just put, oh, that's a little harsh. Just put it on the edge like this. And you get the same effect, and it's not as complicated if you are having trouble loading your brush. If you want, you see these nice smooth strokes I'm getting? You want these smooth strokes. Let me show you here. Okay. Here's a violet. Oops, I need to be in the thing here. Okay, quick and dirty violet. If I use a small brush, And I try to load it with pink and purple. I get a lot of, or even blue and purple. I have to take a million more strokes to get what I want. Now up here on these little guys, probably not so bad. But down here, do you see? It's like, it's real choppy. Okay, it's the same thing. Now I'm just going to take my bigger brush, load it with blue, load it with purple. Look at this. I'm pulling it across with the C strokes. Look at how smooth that is. It won't affect these little guys because they're tiny. They'll be the same either way. But see this? It's the size of that. So when I come down like this, I'm doing strokes that are nice and smooth. But when I come down like that with this guy, I can't unless I squish out this part, and then even then it doesn't look as nice. So I'm not going to put background on this time. So there's I don't know if you have a piece of plastic or these page protectors like this, but let me show you. You can practice. Get a study that you have in a page protector. Take your paint, put it on your brush, and try painting it. Okay, and then this is a large brush that I'm using, so I guess I decided I'd use the larger brush. Okay, and then try a color over here and see what you get there. Oh, can you see that? I'm sorry. There. Practice with a page protector and then come back and do the edge. Use a color that's the opposite of what you're painting it with. You know, like I'm using red here and these are white, just so I can see where my strokes are. But then here's your violets. And I would take some violet and I would just try it. Okay, I want to paint the lower half. I think the brush probably, I don't know what the rule of thumb is, but it should probably be slightly smaller than the space that you're painting. So see, here's this, and this goes up to there, and it's like 2/3 the size of what I want to paint there. And here. So I would say if you have one of these page protectors, practice. We're going to put the yellow in the center. Up, come here, you. I'm using my liner. You want a little brush for this, so I'm using this guy here. A little there, and a little here. I'm not going to put my red in. I think I'm going to fire it with the yellow, and then I'll put the red in next time. Okay. Then whiskers. Now, you can put them on now, or you can wait. I personally am not good at putting whiskers on, and I'll mess up what I've done. So I think I'll wait, and the next time I'll put little whiskers on him too, and the red dot in the middle. I will do the little stems. This is shading green. I'm just going to take, oops, I need a little more here. Shading green, and I'll put it through there and through up here. And then I think maybe I'll use a little moss and just do a little, there's usually little leaves up here. There. There we go. And I have stems coming down here. And get my Q-tip here. I want to get that color out of there. It shouldn't be there. I think all the other colors are pretty good. You can also use the Q-tip just to kind of, you know, make the edges of your leaf look better. Okay, and I'm going to take this and this, and I'm going to go, meow. I hate doing lines like this. Yeah. You have to have just the right amount of oil, but not too much oil to make this work. Yeah, you don't want to do a filbert, though. Filberts don't have any... there we go. The filberts really don't have any edge on them. And see the center here, I'm going to do that dark, but next time. I'm not going to do that this time. So I would take this and fire it. Now the other thing is this is going to be a coaster, remember? So I want to pull out my other coaster and see how they look together. So this will be the first one. This will be the second one. Both only have one fire on them at this time. I like the background on here, the shadow background, so I may put a little background just around the center section of this, but I'm not going to do a full background on these. And the reason is because I think with coasters, you need to keep it simple. Then pick up those brushes, keep painting. I will see you next week.